There were more movements in this one particular fight than there are in the whole of the first Matrix. It might actually be double. So that's a good place to start.
It's Keanu fighting 100 versions of Hugo. But the boys have created and choreographed a sequence that is so intricate and so involved.
In the Burly Brawl, you see Neo being more and more challenged so that he has to raise his level of skill to combat the opposite will. Smith, my character, has no resolution, cannot conquer the opposite will, because in that moment there's no understanding of that, of how to do it physically. So he escapes.
What's really cool is that the scene in itself has 3 acts. First act has about 8 Smiths versus Neo. The second act is up around 25, and then the third act is up to 80 Smiths in the park at once. Along the way, we start with stunt doubles and somewhat conservative Hong Kong-style block-offs and quick cuts everywhere. Then as we get to the second act, where there's 25 men, there'll be like a mixture of CG Smiths and head replacements and doubles going on all at the same time. In the third act, where there's up to 80 men, this will be all virtual, all computer graphics, including Neo.
John came to us with storyboards for the Burly Brawl concept at the time, and goes through it with us and says, look, so we've got these shots in Matrix Reloaded that are going to have Keanu doing Kung Fu against Agent Smith. And John goes, so yeah, there's a couple of them. Well, maybe more than a couple, 5, 6, 7. So we start going, well, I guess we'll have to like shoot, lock up the camera and shoot multiple passes. And he goes, no, you're not quite getting it. It's more than 6 or 7. It's kind of 100, maybe 200, maybe 300 in one shot. Oh, okay. Huh. And then he says, yeah, and kind of bullet time as well.
Just like the last film, the brothers have got the support to push for very difficult things.
You don't want to expose the directors to too much risk. It's kind of different with Larry and Andy. Larry and Andy will take risks. And instead of us going, well, we really want to do this, it was more, you guys have got to do this. You've got to work it out. We don't care if you say it's really hard. We want to support you, but you've got to be able to do it.
At least half of the creativity in doing something like that is in planning the fight. So Larry and Andy and Wu Ping worked out the fight. I mean, Wu Ping choreographed it, ran it through Larry and Andy. They gave their additions to it. And then Wu Ping and his guys recorded themselves doing all the moves. And then I cut the fight together.
We didn't pre-plan the photography, and the procedure for that was to figure out, by way of Wu Ping's guys, what amazing feats Neo was going to do, figure out what percentage of that was actually capturable, and or a percentage of capture plus animation extensions, and some was just pure animation.
John managed to get some research funding from Larry and Andy and the studio, and we set off doing a test.
3, 2, 1, action!
We're doing this test August 14th, 15th, and 16th, year 2000. This is our first proof of concept on this idea. We've been running universal capture tests to create the synthetic face and form of Keanu for the last month and a half. Our big goal is by October, November to start having a representation of all these pieces in a virtual environment. These dudes obviously are Wu Ping's mind-blowing martial arts team. They're wearing all these highly reflective balls, and these balls are being read by these cameras up here in a procedure known as motion capture. 120 times a second they are flashing light. It looks like they're constant, but they're not. They're really strobing. And the balls, being super reflective, kick back every time they're being flashed. And we take the data and we begin to calculate where all of the little markers on their bodies are. We have taken the motion of one of the best martial artists in the world, and we have put it inside the form of Neo. So now we have a very capable Keanu Reeves kicking the living shit out of many dudes at once. Everything in the frame is 100% computer generated, the background, all the characters. Our methods completely surround three-dimensionally recording performance and then editing a lot of performances together into a longer performance. All we're really after is extending very difficult actions and viewing that from any angle in a way that just keeps the camera running longer instead of all these brief little cuts.
The park set had to accommodate a large fight where there were going to be several hundred people, I suppose. It's the sort of place where people once had lived and played, and kids grew up in the playground there and had a great time, and then kind of the world had moved on and just left this void.
If you can imagine maybe like a 20, 25-story tenement park, it was like probably twice the size of an average soundstage.
One of the wonderful things is that Owen puts so much detail into every set he builds that it can only make our visual effects look better. It's just really great. And we came in and we took 2,000 stills of the set as the initial pass to help us digitize every little thing from every window to every tree to the playground set. It's pretty much the only way to capture something as lush and detailed as Owen's set.
And we were able to use those same photographs with all the same painting and texture and detail and variation that Owen had put in there, bring it into the digital world, create these completely virtual camera moves that you never even think that wasn't real, because it was sourced from the real set.
It is definitely one of our favorite sets. We go above it, around it, and we travel a lot. It is definitely one of the sets that demanded the most work.
I'm Sister Fury, and this is Fists of Fury.
Let's shoot, man.
Every afternoon for 9 weeks, me and 12 stuntmen on the floor went through a 5.5-minute routine. I believe I had over 500 moves.
Each Smith will attack Neo and perhaps lay 3 punches or 2 punches and a kick on Neo and then be dispatched with. They figured ultimately it was easier for me to just learn each move on the day. I actually got to know the first 10 or 15 Smith's moves, but ultimately on the day they changed anyway. So I really was learning the fight as they would in Hong Kong, which was just on the day.
All the Agent Smith doubles were pretty much auditioned. We auditioned about 50 guys, acrobats, gymnasts, martial art guys, regular stunt guys. Put them through about 4 months of training to mimic the actor Hugo Weaving, as well as learn the fight choreography and develop the skills they're going to need for this.
They have expertise in different areas. Some are acrobats, some are martial artists, some can do performances, you know, that you would only get in a circus.
Are they tough guys? They're tough guys with soft hearts, how's that?
There were Smith lessons where I'd watch them run and then I'd watch them walk, and then so I kind of gave them a few pointers, but it wasn't more than a couple of lessons really.
When you see the scenes, you gotta remember that's the real Hugo mixed in with like 12 of the best martial arts stunt guys around.
And action!
And he's holding his own pretty well. No computers. No computers, real deal stuff. John Gaeta takes over and does his multi-passes and composite shots to really amplify the amount of people we have.
I'm totally, absolutely ready for the juggernaut of multi-pass mayhem that is being inflicted upon me by the very well-written prose of the Wachowski brothers. Remember, it's the writers that invite the technological onslaught that you may see.
So right now what we've got here is a motion control setup. It allows us to put multiple Smiths into the scene without having to use the computer graphics technology. So this rig is completely repeatable. Every time the camera goes past, we can get it to do the same move time and time again.
We'd put one Hugo there, film him, and then we'd take the camera back, and then we'd put another Hugo there and we'd film him again. So it looked initially like you would see everyone repeated was Hugo.
By the end of the sequence, there's like 80-odd Agent Smiths.
The complicated thing was working out how we were going to shoot that many Smiths fighting Keanu all at once.
There are certain parts of the sequences that we had to create that we had to map Keanu's face or Hugo's face, and we had to do things with their bodies and their look that are not real.
So the challenge was, how do you generate synthetic humans? And we thought the hardest thing would be generating a human face that had the right expressions. So we built a system that we use multiple high-def cameras, use them to shoot an actor, and then we can reconstruct that actor's facial performance. Every little muscle movement, every mouth movement, eye movement, teeth movement, all of that can be reconstructed so that we can then fly around that with a virtual camera. So we can then stick that onto a live person's body or onto a synthetic body.
The problem with working on actual humans is they're so recognizable. You look at humans every day, you're very unforgiving when you see CG hair or CG face or any of those things.
It would take an animator who was basically the Picasso of his time to actually completely freehand a performance like that.
We basically used those facial performances and we've assigned different performances on every Smith. So we had this whole process of assigning different performances to the different Smiths. So they all do different things.
The bullet time shot in the first movie was a little more practical. The action was shot from a bunch of still cameras. We're sort of recreating, Keanu and recreating Hugo so that we can basically put the camera anywhere and do anything. But the idea was that the camera is always traveling at the same speed, it's just the motion is slowed down.
No frozen motion, that was the mid-90s. We wore different clothes back then.
It's sort of this blend between use mocap where the mocap works and where the mocap doesn't work, where it's just doing something that's just not capturable or just like superhuman, then that's where the hand animation has to pick up. Dynamic simulation is virtual crash test dummies that you can just smack around and they'll react similar to how a human would react if he was smacked by a bull. You can give it an animation and then hit it with a ball and it'll react to the ball but try and maintain the existing animation that you have on it. In this case, basically everyone who gets hit by a pole was a dynamic simulation. As the shots get more developed, we add more and more Smiths, and once the animation's final, it can get passed to the cloth department.
We worked very closely with modeling, with rigging, the animators, because we took inputs from all of those, and cloth was essentially sort of a hub.
All the clothing that you see is the way we actually get it to look so real is we get a cloth sample for each one of the characters, you know, whether it's this piece of the suit, a piece of Neo's coat, whatever, and we basically put it through this device that shoots it from many different angles, and it gives us an approximation of how a particular material reacts to light and different camera angles. Then we put that into the computer system, and bingo, we get a realistic looking piece of cloth.
The brothers, they wanted to really have a lot of interaction with Neo's cassock, with his personality, or sort of have a connection with that. Once they were done with shooting, they cleaned them up and then they sent it to us so that we would be able to get a look and feel of the weight of it, as well as how it wrinkled and bent, and as well as try to see how well it fit, and little details like, you know, how many snaps were on there, and you know, how far away the buttons are from the collar. So there was a lot of attention paid to this and Agent Smith's outfit.
Both the animation and the cloth get passed to the color and lighting department, and they're the guys that, you know, render it and make it look so real.
We spend a lot of time developing new image-based lighting techniques. We have the ability of extracting every single light in the set so that it looks it's completely mathematically represented in our computer graphics scenes.
One of the big things that makes any computer-generated object look the way it looks is the way in which the light in an environment plays on it.
If we're ever adding a computer-generated component, we have to be able to know exactly how Bill set his lights. So we use the chrome ball that's over there to tell us where everything was and how bright it was.
Because it's a sphere and because it's chromed or mirrored, it actually reflects the entire environment. So by taking a picture of a chrome ball, you've actually taken a picture of effectively the entire environment. What it's letting us do in one image is measure the color of the environment as seen from any given point. We now have a record, a measurement of the light, of the color and the intensity of the light coming into the point where the chrome ball is.
I would think that the methodology of creating a master content through all those means and then post-photographing it and editing it and all of that stuff, yeah, I think that will become common.
Animation's a difficult thing. We had a great animation team working on the Burly Brawl, and we had a ton of motion capture, but it's still hard to get them nuances in. I think it's going to be quite a while before people can truly see character animation as being completely perfect.
We're so accustomed to seeing fights made editorially, where you see a cut to a guy throw a punch, and cut to a reaction, and cut back to a wide shot, and over the shoulder beat. It's all done through the editorial process, and these sequences are not done that way. There are no cuts. The camera is showing you what it wants you to see while it keeps on moving, and it's just a whole new way of seeing something occur.
即係我自己做導演嘅途徑咧，就從舞獅做起嘅，即係從舞獅，即係我自細跟我爸爸練功練功，跟住我爸帶我哋入電影圈做舞獅，跟住做到3、4年之後就做指導啦，做指導做到差唔多6、7年到啦，就開始做導演啦。大概拍邊啲戲我就唔記得咗咁多啦，大概應該過去都有最多係20零30部戲到啦。呢啲同 Andy 兄弟睇咩戲接觸我就唔係好清楚啦。但係我同佢接觸咗之後，我覺得我拍嘅戲咧，佢係咪好似睇過晒咁樣，好似好熟即係香港片嘅動作咁樣，即係佢好了解我哋香港嗰啲動作啊，同埋。 每個人都有佢嘅擅長，我先至會揾嘅。每個人嘅擅長，每個人擅長每個人都有一樣嘢擅長嘅。
These guys on this team, they've been in some of the biggest films and so many of the greatest martial arts films ever seen. If you look at these faces one by one and learn their names, you will find them blanketed through the recent history of Hong Kong action films.
其實長人佢本身設計啲小嘢啊，嗰啲小動作佢係好好嘅，好似阿弟弟啊，同埋阿華仔啊，佢自己本身上威啊，即係嗰個威力感覺好好嘅。老恩咧嗰啲 嗰啲中國拳術好好嘅，陳虎嗰啲武術底好好嘅，迪安嗰啲又係即係讀啲嘢都即係都幾全面嘅，所以每個人有每個人嘅作用嘅，即係泰財個拉威也拉得好準嘅，即係我每個人嘅工作量都有佢嘅特色喺度嘅。都係睇劇本每場動作嘅劇情需要啦，即係呢個劇情必須要如果係打好多個人嘅，我就應該開始設計我點樣打好多人，點樣啲手腳密啲啊，同埋唔可以俾啲人停啊，俾成同埋單對單嘅動作，我哋點樣設計得佢有啲特色，有啲漂亮嘅招數啊咁樣，即係每場咧都因劇本而設計嘅，同埋。同導演溝通完之後，再改良再設計咁樣。佢呢個回頭慢呢，我可以快啲，佢回慢唔係你快，佢回得慢啊！你梗係快啦，佢啲我覺得嗰場打好多個史密夫嗰場，同埋兵器嗰兩場，柏菲同埋柒濤嗰場，呢兩場係最難嘅，因為Keanu 同佢從來未曾試過打過中國兵器嘅，即係要由佢冇一啲都冇底，一啲都唔識嘅，要訓練到佢打得似模似樣咧，嗰個比較難咧。同埋柏輝嗰度咧，一個人打咁多人咧，即係喺 Keanu 嚟講，又係從來未試過嘅，即係我要打到好，即係啲拳腳好密，啪好密，邊度打邊啊！即係呢兩場比較難啲啦。因為呢個時間到咗㗎啦，再定大。開始構思都係導演俾個概念俾我哋，即係我先根據導演嘅概念嚟構思嘅。但係構思嗰時候都幾有難度嘅，因為一個 Hugo 變咗成幾十個 Hugo， 一個人打幾十個嗰種拳腳速度啊，同埋嗰種高難度閃啊，即係一路構思，即係嗰場戲我睇我構思得比較耐咗少少嘅，即係起碼構思咗有一個月有冇啊？應該有啊，難度比較高啲啊！跟住現場拍完，仲要拍 motion capture 接落去啊嘛，即係比較係難啲嘅嘢啦，即係一打咁多人嘅要手腳好密先得，即係我又唔想等嗰啲史密夫有一個喺度等啊，又唔想即係安排呢個動作好密、好節奏好緊湊，冇人冇感覺，冇人喺度等招嘅。3, 2, 1, action！ Motion capture 對我嚟講就係好新啊，即係我都係好似第一次去拍呢啲嘢，除咗Matrix 第一集就係有少少，咪都6部嘅嚟嘅，睇呢集先 motion capture，即係我覺得好新啊！即係唯一我覺得好嘅地方咧，就覺得即係我哋好多嘢現場我哋拍唔到嘅，即係做唔到嗰種感覺嘅，喺 motion capture 可以做到出嚟。即係嗰啲反應、嗰啲拳腳、嗰啲力啊、嗰啲點樣翻、點樣飛啊，喺 motion capture 做得好過喺現場做嘅。1、2、3，一插就咁去啦嘛，同佢望一望，俾佢再望一望。即係我接到呢場戲之後咧，我覺得以 Keanu 嚟打兵器咧，打一樣嘢啊，我覺得係唔夠痛快，即係唔夠變化嘅，所以我設計佢好多變化，多打幾樣嘢，即係不斷咁樣換兵器啊，不斷啊，譬如開始打西打甩咗又換支棍啊，棍甩咗換把短劍啊，換長劍啊，換到雙棍打，即係我覺得個層次一路咁變化落去咧，個動作兵器動作個感覺唔會好悶，即係一路有變化，又去睇又去睇，一路轉變兵器，覺得觀眾睇落覺得會新鮮啊！即係我自己嘅構想係咁去嘅。我覺得即係多變化咧，就等於多趣味。即係我哋由底下打到上樓梯，再打上2樓，再打上睇下，即係變咗多變化就多啲趣味啦。我覺得係趣味多咗好多嘅，即係因為有變化先有趣味啊嘛。即係上一場佢打個 agent 係到last end 打就係單手打， 可以好輕鬆咁擋咗嗰個 Asian 啲拳腳嘅。呢集咧我就呢度咧。呢個 upgrade 翻，顧名思義 upgrade 翻，所以我想秉承翻上集，單手擋，但係對方咧 upgrade 咗嘅，可以擋到佢擋到呢度嘅拳同揸到嘅拳，即係呢度咧原來都 upgrade 咗嘅，即係好快化解嗰啲拳腳，打開佢，同埋有啲利用有啲高難度腳法啦，即係捉住似旋轉踢點樣到後踢嗰啲，就加強咗佢嗰啲高難度嘅動作同埋新穎啲嘅動作，俾佢嚟表達呢場戲咧。
哇！我快呀！Put the costume on.
又仲好啲嘅就係加強出型啦，就會好啲啦。同埋有乜嘢唔同咧？呢個同上集梗係絕對有啲唔同㗎啦。即係起碼呢個我哋設計佢用電單車嘅頭盔嚟打，同埋我哋仲設計另外一種新嘅腳法喺後邊踢上去嘅，即係同上集冚唪唥都係有分別嘅。個頭盔打得都好有 power， 好勁嘅啫。
You're strong enough, yeah. Watch the target, yeah. That feels good because you can lock it.
即係攞嚟時講，即係每場戲。每部戲嘅動作都唔同嘅，總之成場嘅咧，即係喺個貨櫃車頂打咧，即係我個構想整個構想都係喺危險動作過嚟構想。個車速行緊，即係我點樣打去車邊啊？點樣拉車邊啊？點樣再好難咁翻上去打到。幾乎跌落車啊！即係全部喺圍繞住係車行嗰種速度同埋我哋盡量俾少少好似好危險嘅動作落去嚟到增加嗰個喺車頂打嗰種特色咧。太大個啦
！Too much? Okay.
其實中意做導演。仲動作導演都係即係一種興趣嚟嘅，但兩樣比較中意做導演多啲。不過做導演係辛苦好多，由頭到尾辛苦好多。做動作導演就淨係專心設計動作點樣設計啲新嘅動作有乜高難度動作設計落去就專心啫。但係做導演咧就顧好多嘢顧。嗰啲文戲顧成場戲嘅包裝顧劇本好多嘢啦，就兩樣嘢就同我導演輕鬆啲，淨係做導演咧就辛苦啲，但係我都興趣做導演多啲。
Chad Stahelski has so much experience with wire work, who is a professional kung fu fighter, who has been, an exceptional stuntman for 8-10 years. I mean, he's really been through all of the elements that this picture asks.
First and foremost, I'm Keanu Reeves' stunt double. Also in charge of the training facility to make sure the Hong Kong guys get what they need. I'm kind of liaison between them and the stunt department. Also kind of in charge of the martial arts stunt work, like setting up our rigging, making sure that the stunt aspect of the fight scenes go well. Kind of the assistant stunt coordinator to R.A. R.A. Rondell, he's like the head guy.
Chad is the head of this fight department as far as I'm concerned. I'm out of bounds. I'm a guest on his set.
Chad seems to hit a lot of people. A lot of the people here have a lot of good things to say about him, but he really hits a lot of people.
We've all had a few knee problems. I had like 2 knee surgeries, 2 shoulder surgeries, busted my ankle, busted my hand, a lot of bruises. Mostly on this show, it's a lot of bruises.
Chad works harder than anybody I know. He's the first one in the morning, he's the last one training at night, he's the one training on the weekends, he's the one who's the motivator.
My guys are tired. Look at him there. This guy's asleep. This one still doesn't know what job he's on. This one can't remember his name.
He keeps his crew working day in and day out, and it shows in his work.
I just want you to pay attention on the tax department. He's the most rich stuntman in America. The tax department pay attention.
Is it all in good hands with Chad? Good answer.
Yeah, you couldn't be in better hands.
We are here because of you, Mr. Anderson. We're here to take from you what you tried to take from us. Purpose.
What's happening to him?
Don't know.
Yes, that's it. It'll be over soon. You. Yes, me. Me. Me too.
Hi, this is John Gaeta. What we're going to be looking at now is the anatomy of a Burly Brawl shot. We like to call it the drop-down shot. In the year 2000, Steve Skrosh drew these boards to illustrate the beginning of what we would consider the final act in this three-act fight. We begin in a God's eye view, and we spiral down to something that graphically emulated a hurricane. Originally, the hurricane idea was not as evident. Wu Ping and us on stage realized that the fight could potentially be interesting if it had the master revolving sort of circle around Neo. And what you're seeing here is the capture for Neo and his immediate adversaries. These would be sophisticated choreographed pieces that Wu Ping and the Hong Kong team would work out. There would be like hundreds of these captures to choose from, creating a vast library, which could be erector-setted, if you will, by the layout team with the computer graphics side of this. The UCAP process is incredible when it's being fully realized, as we'll see later on the Super Punch. The part of the process that involves getting the expression performance is perhaps the most complex, in which the actor needs to, in a somewhat restrained situation, provide an emotional sort of facial expression which is captured and processed and assigned on an individual basis. For some time we were speculating whether we wanted to try any scenes with articulate speech in close-up shots with CG humans, and there were discussions that I was having with Larry and Andy about possibly taking the shot where Smith says more and making that fully virtual. But, you know, as applied strictly for action beats, it was not necessary to apply articulate speech. However, the technology is there. So layer one, primary action, would be Keanu Reeves and at times Chad confronting the 8 stuntmen. There is a circle around this circle, which will contain many more men, that will be attempting to gain access to the fight. With the virtual depiction of a fight like this, there is no reason why not to have absolute contact. In the case of this scene, the whole point is that you can actually show the impact in its full effect. So we have the fellas dressed in body armor underneath their mocap suits so that Keanu or Chad can smash them with full force. Okay, so here we are beginning to create the preliminary versions of the virtual set. We're doing this so that we have a much better idea of scale. If we take a look at this scene, we can see how men are coming into and out of this fight from a layer just beyond the immediate foreground circle. Some hits could be the product of a Hugo Weaving running entry, a stuntman hit and collision, and then an animated extension because the Smith needed to travel quite a distance. There was a whole slew of terms from home runs to grounders and line drives that the bros would apply so we would understand the sort of severity of the hit and the distance of the hit. At this point you can see the design of the vortex starting to come into play. It was considered many ways almost a yin-yang type of graphic in that there would be equal numbers coming from either side and creating the type of symmetry that the Wachowski brothers love and apply so much in many of their frames. Based on our original test in 2000, we were going to have guys jumping from windows and going through windows. The other attribute about the test, which is fascinating, which we did not pursue as much, was a much more hyperactive camera that was at times quite more attached to Neo's periphery. Here is the final version at long last. This is a good shot for illustrating the whole process. In terms of a wide to macro view of the process, this one pretty much shows you the whole thing.